We're back on Nittany Game Week. Time for our Impact interview. We go back to 1982 national champs. Running back Kurt Warner last week. Now it's time for the quarterback turn. Todd Blackledge, who is calling the Penn State-Indiana game for ABC. Todd, thanks for joining us. Start with an impact question. This is the impact interview, so we want to start with that question about the impact that Penn State had on your life, having come from a football coaching family and being a great Phi Beta Kappa at Penn State. What kind of impact did your experience in this football program have on your professional life?
Well, I think it had affected me in a lot of ways. First of all, to go to a place where we were able to compete at a very high level for every year that I was there. And, we weren't in a conference at the time. We weren't in the Big Ten. We were an independent school. But we played in major bowl games. We played a lot of big TV games and then ultimately won a national championship my senior year. So that was the first way that it impacted me and impacted my football career. But at the same time, going there and being at Penn State where Coach Paterno's put a real emphasis on not just being a great player, but being a great student and going to class and doing the right things, doing things the right way, handling your business the right way. And I think just having that balance throughout my time at Penn State and really trying to keep those things all at the same high level helped me just for whatever I was going to do in life. Obviously I got to play in the NFL for a while, but I've been doing broadcasting for a whole lot longer. And so, part of my preparation at Penn State was for what I'm doing now and what I've really enjoyed doing.
Todd, well, football is certainly important. No discussion of a Todd Blackledge broadcast would be complete without some mention of food. I consider you the Guy Fieri of college football. And your segment, Takes the Town, returns after a 7-year hiatus, by the way. I have the book. Are you as excited about that as everybody else is?
Yeah, I really am. I mean, it's the crazy thing, Jay, is that even though I hadn't done it for 7 years, people still thought I was still doing it. I mean, even though I hadn't done it for so long, people are still asking me when I'd run into them, where are you going to eat this week? And I was like, well, dude, I haven't done that for 7 years, but and so when I decided to bring it back this year, not only was I excited, fans were excited, everybody on our crew, I mean, our whole production crew loved Taste of the Town, loved being a part of it. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun and we've had 3 really good weeks of it so far.
Hey, Todd, everyone knows about your film-intensive preparation for the football part of your broadcast. As we looked at the Indiana film, we saw a team whose turnovers and untimely mistakes cost them a win against Cincinnati. For Penn State fans, who may you think this is a walkover type of game? What threats do you see with Indiana?
Well, first of all, I think they're better than their record suggests, at 2-2. And you mentioned it. I mean, there are a lot of statistics in college football that a lot of them you can kind of throw out the window, don't always mean that much. But turnover and turnover margins, that is always going to be a telling statistic. So in the 2 games they lost against 2 really good teams, Iowa in the opener and Cincinnati, both top 10 teams, they had 6 interceptions and they had a costly fumble in the Cincinnati game also down on the 2-yard line. So those are the kind of mistakes that really hurt Indiana. I do think they're a better team. I think, if you're an Indiana fan, the thing you feel better about after even the Cincinnati game, even though Michael Penix threw a couple bad interceptions, he still made a lot of really good plays in that game. And he played really well last week on the road against Western Kentucky. So I think from his mental standpoint, being back from the injury, feeling comfortable with his knee, confident in what he's doing, I think he's probably in the best place he's been in to this point in this season. And I think he has the skill set to give them a chance in this ballgame.
Todd, when you look at Penn State, can you give fans 1 or 2 reasons why they are a playoff caliber team and 1 or 2 reasons they aren't?
Well, first of all, let me say this. I think it's still too early to really talk about playoff teams. I think that when you look at them, they've got 2 really good wins. Going on the road and beating Wisconsin in the opener. Now, it's proven out that Wisconsin's offense has got some issues right now, but at the time, you didn't know that, right? So you go on the road, you win in Madison at Camp Randall, first year back with crowds. They played the whole year last year with no crowds and no noise. So that was an impressive win. And then the whiteout game, Auburn's a good football team, and I've covered a lot of Auburn games over the years, and they got a new coaching staff, which, they've got a new system, but they've got some proven guys. So that was another really good win. So I think when you look at what Penn State's doing really well right now, I think Sean Clifford's playing at a pretty high level. He's playing with a lot of confidence. I think they've got some explosive guys on the perimeter that can make plays in the passing game. I don't think they're running the football with great effectiveness right now, and I think that's something that has to get better. But they've really hit a lot of big plays and chunk kind of plays in their passing game. Defensively, over the last several years, even though they've lost a lot of the guys to the NFL, they still seem to have outstanding defensive linemen. They have guys who can pressure the quarterback, create havoc, in the backfield of opponents. And I think, and I was just talking to Matt Millen earlier this week, who had him last week, and we were talking about their personnel. And Matt thinks this is the best secondary that he's seen at Penn State in the last several years. And I think it starts with the safety Brisker, who's an outstanding player. They've got long, athletic corners. And so, I think defensively, they've kind of played at a certain level for the last several years. And maybe this year, they may not have the star power up front, but their secondary is really, really talented.
Todd, obviously you're covering big national games every week, and I know you've done the Alabama and Georgia games, if I'm not mistaken, in person. So Georgia's defense looks like one for the ages. Alabama looks like Alabama again. You talk about your impressions of those teams and maybe some other teams that jump out at you you've seen or that you're watching on tape.
Yeah, so I did see Alabama in week one, and it's amazing. They just reload, right? They lost 10 guys to the NFL. They lost 6 first-round draft picks, first starting quarterback, new offensive coordinator, Bill O'Brien, who, but they just looked so efficient and just dismantled Miami in that first game. So they looked the part. Now, they showed some vulnerability in Gainesville last week against Florida, and they're going to get tested again this week or 2 weeks ago at Florida, but they're going to get tested by Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin and Matt Corral, who's really a talented quarterback. I did the Alabama-Ole Miss game last year, and it was a shootout in Oxford, and Ole Miss really gained a lot of yards, scored a lot of points on them. So I don't think they're invincible, right? Georgia defense has been as good as defense as I've seen all season. Offensively, if they can keep JT Daniels healthy, I think they've got a chance to really make a run at it. They're missing some wideouts. Their number one guy, George Pickens, is still recovering from a knee injury. If they get him back and a couple other guys back, I think they'll be even better on offense. But again, they don't look. It just seems different, right, this year. I mean, we've gone through a month. Clemson doesn't look like Clemson. Ohio State has not looked good on defense. So you got to also say Oregon looks solid, right? They not only are the best team in the Pac-12, but to come across the country and go into Columbus and to play the kind of game that they played, their quarterback, who's an older guy, a transfer from BC, played a great game. I thought Joe Moorhead called a brilliant game in that game against Ohio State. And so they've looked really good. So we're still just a month in, but it's been a very interesting thing to see so far in college football. And we've got some really interesting matchups this weekend, right? We have Cincinnati going to Notre Dame. I think that's going to be a really telling game for both programs. And a little, side note there, Marcus Freeman, the new defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, came from Cincinnati. So kind of a family deal there. You got 2 other undefeated teams in the Big Ten, Iowa going to Maryland. We'll find out, if Maryland's for real, what that team's all about. Michigan, who I've covered twice in the last 2 weeks or in the last 3 weeks, they showed some warts a little bit against Rutgers, and Rutgers played really well in the second half of that game. But Michigan goes on the road for the first time against Wisconsin. So I just think it's been a really, really fun year so far. And I think part of that is because at this point, the end of September, we can't really say who the best team in the ACC is, who the best team in the Big Ten is, who the best team in the Big 12 is. So it's been kind of fun in that regard.
Ledge, the Big Ten East looks very formidable this fall with surprising strength and renewed energy from top to bottom. As you've seen some of these teams, who are some of the teams that could surprise Penn State fans this fall and in the coming seasons?
I think probably the most surprising, I would say right now at this point, is probably Michigan State. Because they had not been too good. And I think that they had some serious roster turnover. I think they went in, the transfer portal, which a lot of teams have really helped themselves through the transfer portal. It's really affected and had an impact on college football across the board. And I think they really got some good players out of the transfer portal. So they're a different looking team. I don't know if they're if they're as good as Penn State or if they're as good as Ohio State in the East. But they're off to a good start and they're playing with a lot of confidence. So I think that's the team, to me, that's the most surprising. On the other side, Iowa's an undefeated team. Iowa's got a couple good wins under their belt right now. Their defense is a typical Iowa defense, rugged, hard to run against, very fundamentally sound. They don't do a lot of complex things, but what they do real well. I just don't know if Iowa's offense is good enough to beat a really good opponent. But right now, their defense is kind of carrying the day for them.
A lot of good opponents in the Big Ten. Todd, when you get to come home and do a game in Beaver Stadium, people are taking pictures with you out in the tailgate lots, up in the press box. Does that carry a little more meaning for you? Is there an extra spark when you get in those elevators and head up to the booth?
Well, there is, but those people have to be old because I'm old now. I mean, the young fans that come to Penn State games, they have no idea who I am, right? In fact, most of them probably
you're the
think of me
food
as
guy
a food
now.
or a football. Right, I'm a food guy. But it is always fun for me to come back, and occasionally I'll see some former teammates that are at games and get a chance to talk to them, and or go to a tailgate of some people that I know, either a little bit before the game or right after the game. But it is fun. It is fun for me to come back and do a game, and just had a lot of great memories there for 4 years back in the early 80s.
Well, speaking of memories, in your career as a starter, you played the nation's toughest schedule in both 81 and 82 and went 9-3 versus ranked opponents, 2-0 against number one teams. What about your preparation gave you such an edge to perform at that level against teams of that caliber?
I think part of it was, Jay, I mean, I don't know that I'd prepared differently from week to week, no matter who the opponent was. I mean, I was kind of a routine guy. I'm the same way now doing broadcasting. I don't care what the game is. I'm going to prepare the same way. I'm going to watch the same amount of film. I'm going to do the same kind of things, my routine. I think what happened, though, at Penn State is you mentioned our schedule. We had so many high-profile games, and we just loved. I mean, that's why guys chose to come to Penn State, was to have the opportunity to play in games like that. And your dad, as our coach, he loved those games. I mean, he loved to compete on that stage against a similar team as us, that had the same kind of talent, same kind of goals, same kind of aspirations. And so those games were just fun. So, I mean, you locked in because he locked in, and you were locked in because those are the kind of games that you live to play in at Penn State.
Todd, last week we had Kurt Warner on our show, and he revealed that on the TD pass you threw to him at Notre Dame, he lined up in the slot and made eye contact with you, and he ran a seam route. Is that how you remember it, and is that the type of chemistry that made your teams at Penn State special?
Well, that is true, Scrap. But the other thing, which he probably didn't tell you, is for most of the third quarter and most of the end of the second quarter, I didn't know what I was doing at all because I'd gotten hit right under the chin. I got basically knocked out of the game, and I had to come out for a series. And of course, in today's world with concussion protocol, I don't know that there's any way I'd have gotten back in the game. But I was able to pass whatever test I did on the sideline.
2 smelling salts.
Came out the next, whatever it was. But for a long period of time, I mean, I was in a fog. And I do remember that touchdown. It was kind of a check at the line of scrimmage, and we did make eye contact and we hit it. That was a huge play, obviously, but there's a lot of portions of that game that I don't have a very clear recollection of.
They used to ask you if you knew what day it was, and in college football, all you had to say was Saturday, and you were covered.
We laugh about it now. Pretty serious to think about, right? Am I right? Todd, one final question. For many years when the team buses pulled up to Beaver Stadium, Coach Joe Paterno, the starting person was the first person to get out of the bus, one signifying the importance of your leadership. Some say that tradition started with you. Is that true?
I don't know if it started with me. I know we did it, and that was something that we did, and that was always, there's so many. Here's what I love about college football, that you don't get in pro football. I mean, obviously, pro football is a higher level of ball, better players, better coaches across the board, but college football's got their traditions, right? They've got the game day rituals and traditions all across America, and for us to do that, those blue buses to come rolling up to the stadium, and it was an honor and a treat to sit by Joe on the way up there. The thing I used to laugh at, though, I never said this, of course, but we'd be rolling up there, and all the fans they're lining up, they're all yelling, "Go get him, Joe! Have a great game, Joe! Go get him!" I'm thinking, Joe's not going to make a tackle today. He's not going to throw it. But that was just the reverence and the respect that people have for Coach Paterno.
Let me squeeze this one in. Coach had a rule that if you weren't 5 minutes early, you were already late. After the Sugar Bowl, is it true that you missed the bus right out of the Superdome?
Yeah, but I don't say that was my fault. I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't. They put a time on the board and said you better be out here. I mean, now getting on a bus to go to the game, yeah, you better be on time. That was a case where Greg Gary and I both, we had to do interviews. We were enjoying the moment, and both of us missed the bus. We started walking back to the hotel after the game, and got picked up. Actually, I don't know if I would recommend doing that nowadays, but we got a ride back to the hotel and joined the post-game festivities there at the hotel in short order.
Blaming the media for being tardy right there, and
go.
then now he's
Absolutely.
part of the media. So that's all we got.
Hey, Todd, thanks so much.
Todd, thanks a million.